Meanwhile, on Brad the DC Universe Geeks channel, he decided to open up a case-fresh DC Superheroes Superman figure. Delightful. Yeah, this figure here is actually from the Superman wave, which was wave 2 of the DC superheroes, I believe. The first one was a Batman wave. The second one is a Superman wave. And it was a really good wave. We got Bizarro, Doomsday, Supergirl. It's the, not the actual Kara Zor-El Supergirl. It was the first one they gave us. And then they gave us Superman, obviously, because he's right here. Now, if you look at the back of the packaging here, I first want to point out that if you weren't familiar with these, if you started collecting around the DC Universe Classics and missed the DC superheroes, these were quite nice because you got a comic book with them. Each one got a comic book, which I felt kind of harkened back to the days of the Superpowers collection. Looking at the back of the package and seeing the actual paint jobs and sculpts. I mean, if you're a Superman fan, in my opinion, that's a near perfect Superman figure. The blue is right, the red is right, the face sculpt, it's perfect. And there we got Supergirl. They looked fabulous. That is, until Mattel got their hands on the initial sculpts and then put them into mass production. And this turned into this. Which, it's not a bad Superman figure. But it ain't this. It's a far cry away from being that. Anyhow, I still did rush to the toy store, Toys R Us, the closest one. It was like 45 minutes away. And picked him up day one, along with the rest of the wave. And I still love him, faults and all. We're going to get into all that over the course of the video. So first, we need to actually open him up. So let's do that. Let's open him up. Oh, this one's almost painful to open. I kind of want to keep him in the package, but the things I do for YouTube. YOLO! Oh, man. I almost can't even keep the card back. This is just vicious. So here's the comic book that comes in the package. And here's Soupy. Now, the comic book that came inside of the package, I remember looking at the cover going, whoa, this is going to be probably some really cool classic Superman story. And then I opened it up and I realized that it had to do with the Superman who, was made out of energy and lightning and had to wear that containment suit to hold his body together. And, it kind of gives like a look back at his past and stuff like that. All the different phases he went through and the things he had to do before being in the, containment suit. But I remember thinking this is not a fitting comic book to come with a basic classic Superman figure. This would have been a more fitting comic book to come with the action figure of this Superman. It just, I don't know. It's a good comic, but not really fitting to come in the package. Now, the Superman figure, though not terrible, not great. And even this one suffers from a lot of the same things that when you buy a Mattel action figure, you kind of have to watch out for. But just starting at the bottom and working our way up, looking at the sculpt, we can see the Four Horsemen have done a spectacular job sculpting Superman, though. He's got a nice wide body, a big, huge S on his chest, which is cool, big, flowy, flappy cape made out of the soft rubber, and then there's that Superman face. Now, before I get into the things that I really like about this figure, I'm going to talk about the things that I actually don't like about this figure. That way, they're done and they're out of the way, and I don't have to talk about them anymore. So for one, I never did like his really, really wide stance as an action figure. It was just really, really strange. For one, when you try to put Superman in any kind of a flight pose, with the one straight leg and the one curled leg, it's sideways. And so, sure, if you're taking a picture like that, you barely notice, but that way you sure do. So it makes flight poses just kind of strange. I don't know. It's weird. Just admit it. He's drunk. Must be drinking some hard Kryptonian ale, eh, Cal? All right. Just admit it, though. It's weird. Like, the legs are just so far apart that I don't know. At least that's the way that I see it. Another thing that always kind of irked me about the figure was the fact that the red tone in this figure is so muted. Now, I'm just going to bring out... This is a 30th anniversary Superpowers Superman, and the red tone is exactly what they showed us on the back of the packaging for this figure. And you can see now, this is more like red brick, and this is like fire engine red. This is Superman red. This is muted, trying to look cool for a movie red. I don't know. Again, the red was kind of off-putting. I mean, it doesn't look terrible. It's just not what they showed us on the back of the package. Now, as for the S on this figure on his chest, it's really big, and for me, that's one of the selling points. I really wish that they had have used that S for all the rest of the DC Universe Classics style Superman figures. Instead, the S is smaller on the rest of them. And this to me is almost perfect. Although again, Mattel got their hands on it and messed it up, and every single one has this weird blop down there where they've messed up the S somehow. But I mean, other than that, the S looks good. But then we're on to other things that are kind of wonky, like the eyeballs in this figure. You can see how they're kind of looking up, where on the package, they weren't. The eyeballs were centered. And DC Universe Classics also suffer from this a lot. They would show us the pictures at a New York Comic-Con or San Diego, bring them out for Toy Fair, and the eyeballs never were painted the same when they gave us a finished product. So the sloppiness of the S, the incorrect placement of the eyes by comparison to what they showed us, the muted reds and the wide stance tend to make this Superman figure one that even a lot of Superman fans will pass up on. They just won't buy it for these reasons. Oh, and there's absolutely no S on the back of the cape at all. Now on to the things that I do like about this figure. For one, I like the blue tone they used for this Superman figure. I think that the blue looks really good. This would look even better. It would be complemented by a slightly brighter red. I think it would look nicer. So it's got that in its favor. I do approve of the wider buck in comparison to a DC Universe Classics Superman buck. You can see this one's wider, more Superman and bulky like. So I like that. It has that going for it. And then as well as the belt area, it's different than a DC Universe Classics belt area. This one's smaller, more compact, and it's actually part of the entire groin area, whereas the belt for the DC Universe Classics Superman was a separate piece, or is a separate piece. Also, a lot of people don't like the cape on this figure. They feel like the cape is just too bulky and it's too, much over the shoulders. I don't mind that. I actually kind of like this cape on this figure. I'm okay with it. I have done a cape swap for him in the past, and I used the cape from the Public Enemies, Mattel Public Enemies Superman, and it actually looks really nice on this body. So if you're going to do a cape swap, that works. But really, to me, this cape is just fine. It looks good. But again, it's that muted red, and you know what, on my camera I can look down in the viewfinder and tell you that it's actually showing up more red than it actually is in real life. It's a really muted red for those of you who have never seen one of these in person. Now, leaving all further criticisms aside, we're just going to have a closer look at the Superman figure, starting at the head, working all the way down. This isn't a terrible Superman head sculpt. Some people actually prefer this head sculpt on their DC Universe Classics Superman compared to the one that came on it, because they just feel it looks more like Superman. I don't know, what do you think? Which head sculpt do you like better? Leave it in the comments down below. Which head sculpt is your favorite? DC Superheroes or DC Universe Classics? Anyhow, we're going to keep working our way all the way down. Got the muscles, the biceps. I mean, the detail is exceptional. Absolutely. Up like that. They did skimp out on putting the belt loops at the top of his belt there under his back, but overall, even with the concerns and the criticisms, this is a great figure, and it is one of my favorite Superman figures. I know, you're like, how can it be one of your favorite after criticizing it? It just is. Articulation for the last son of Krypton is as follows. He's got the ab articulation, so he can actually do quite well body-wise in flying poses. He's got waist articulation, swivel at the waist. He's got the groin articulation, typical DC Universe Classics groin articulation. He's got some white plastic fatigue there. That's lovely. But anyway, yeah, they're on a hinge and they're on a swivel. And then he's also got the articulation here above the knee, 360. That's about as far as you're going to get with the knee articulation. And then he also has the ankle articulation. And I do believe that these were rocker ankles. Were they? Yeah, they're rocker ankles. Not the greatest, but there is some rocker motion in there. I'm not sure if that's intended or they're just loose. I'm going to give them a point and say it's probably intended. You've also got articulation in the shoulder in the form of a hinged ball joint and 360 degrees at the bicep as well. And that's about what you're going to get for articulation in the single jointed elbow and complete rotation at the wrist. And then to top it off, Superman also has his head on a ball joint and it can spin 360. It can look up about that. It doesn't really have that much, but when you combine it with the rest of his body, I suppose it looks okay flying, but that's what you get anyway for the articulation for the Superman figure. Now, I just wanted to give a side-by-side comparison of the various blue shades that have been used in Mattel Superman figures of the DC Universe Classics DC superhero variety. Now, they're not showing up exactly as is on the camera, but they're okay representations. And the one thing you are going to see is the difference going all the way up is actually quite pronounced. On the left, we have the unreleased version of Superman in the lighter blue, and then we have the 30th anniversary Superpowers Superman. Then we have the one that we're reviewing today, the DC Superheroes Superman, and then we have the typical darker blue DC Universe Classic Superman that came in slightly varying, shades of this exact blue, though, whether it had shading on it or whichever. They were all pretty much this color when they were official releases. And you can see that the blue on this figure is actually pretty darn good. I wish they could have combined this blue with this red. That would have been awesome. Overall, even though I complain about some of the attributes of this action figure, I must say that it is one of the very best Superman action figures offered, especially for the time. We hadn't seen anything quite of this quality with the articulation and styling. And when the Four Horsemen sculpt something, they mean business. And this is an excellent sculpt, there's no doubt about it. Now, as for what I would actually rate this figure out of 10, well, I give it a solid 7.5 S shields out of 10, docking marks due to sloppy execution of some of the paint apps, be it on his belt or on his S shield up here, the blob of paint down there, on his groin. Those are all very sloppy and they never should have left the factory. Mine even has a scratch on the S shield down there on the bottom of the S. So I would dock marks for that, but I also dock marks for the fact that the paint, the color scheme, is different than what they sold us on. Remember, here's what they sold us on. Nice, bright, vibrant blue and red. It looks fabulous. And then, here's what they gave us. The more muted colors. So I really do wish that they had have painted the face the same and given us the same color scheme as they had have shown us in the first place, and the figure for me would be near perfect. Anyhow, friends, that has been my time, so thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me. If you like this video, please leave a like on it. Leave any comments you have down in the comments section below. If you think you'd like to see more of my sort of content show up in your inbox, well, don't be afraid to hit the subscribe button and ding the bell, and then you'll never miss a video. And I'll see you next time with the next bit of whatever it is I record. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.